So it was about 9 years ago. My in-laws decided to move up from South Carolina, down by near Lake Murray, up to Sun City, which is in Fort Mill. And so it's still in South Carolina, but just in over the border near Charlotte. And the realtor that they were using for their house had loaned them a small truck. They had big truck for moving their furniture, but they needed a small truck for little stuff that they want to take up like themselves to our house and to their house. And so they loaned us their U-Haul truck. It was a fairly good size, not too small. And my father-in-law, I parked my car down there at the U-Haul, and we got the truck. We went, loaded stuff up, took it up to Charlotte, unloaded everything, and then we had to take the drive back. And it's about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive to get back to their house. And we have to go down 77, which is a fairly large size road to go down. Um, and as we were getting off, we had to get off onto a 2-lane road going back to the lake that they live on. So we had to drive down this 2-lane road. It was about another 45-minute drive down that 2-lane road. And as we're driving along, I noticed my father-in-law, I could hear him out of the corner of my ear that he was going, as cars were passing us, he'd go one, one, two, 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 one, one. And I didn't pay attention to it at first. I was just driving along. We were talking about some other things. But I noticed it a couple of times as we're going along. Every time a car would come by, there'd be a one, one, two, 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 one. And finally, like the third or fourth time, I said, well, I just got to ask, what are you doing with these numbers that you're counting on? And he said, well, as I sit here, as he's come towards me, they're one car coming along, but then they split off into two, and they pass us with two, and then turn back into one as we pass. And I was like, oh my gosh, and he was having some issues with his eyes, I think due to some of the issues he was going through. And that was what was happening to him. But oh my gosh, I was like, I am so glad he wanted to drive at first. I'm so glad I didn't, because that would have really scared the heck out of me doing that kind of thing. So that was our first encounter of that kind of stuff going on for him. But anyway, so that's a story. So hello, I'm Don,
And I'm Gina.
and today we're uh, we're
We're
from
with Focus Healthy Family.
and this is podcast number 166. And today we're talking about I can see clearly, or can I?
So, talking about eyesight, vision loss. So, the typical thing when we think about vision loss, I'll tell my little story of when I was about 9 years old and I had been referred to go to the eye doctor. I was having difficulty seeing the blackboard. I guess my teacher had noticed and let my mom know. And I got the exam. We did all that. And then when we went to pick up the glasses, we got in the car, and my mom still remembers this. I was like, wow, the trees are so beautiful. The leaves are such definition. And I remember her saying, she felt kind of bad because I really needed those glasses. So we think about visual clarity is what we're talking about when we think about that. So that's how well we see, right? And as we get older, our ability to adjust between distance and close up vision, um, our eyes have a difficulty making that change. Normally, our young, healthy eyes, you can look out at a distance, you can see the sign on the road, you can glance down at your speedometer and see what speed you're going. You can shift between distance and near vision. And when your eyes struggle to do that, that's when you wind up with bifocals. Or now they have progressive lenses that do a gradual adjustment of change rather than just that line where it's, your distance vision um, prescription, and then, the line below that is for the near vision. So the progressives kind of have come a long way over time.
But before we go too much further in this, we got a couple of things. First is our oh my gosh, my God, my
Caregiver tip.
there
Do we
you
have a
thank you.
caregiver tip today, Don?
And today we're doing one from it's called Positive Direction. And I got this from a friend of mine, Dr. J. Bert Freeman, and it talks about life is not life is not about always being positive. It is about leading your life in a direction that you truly want to go. It is not about taking one big leap from where you are to where you want to be in your life. It's about small steps leading in a positive direction. And one of the things that he showed me with this was he we were doing a presentation on this, and in the presentation, he wanted to show me what he was going to do in his talk. And the what he showed me was a steering column. You know, you've seen it. Well, it's kind of the old-fashioned one. It was the type up there, and it had the P, R, N, D, and L. And he said, "What would you consider to be the positive direction in this?" And of course, I just said, "Well, of course, it's drive." He said, "Well, what if you're backing out of your driveway? Then what would be the positive direction?" And he kind of made it clear what it's not about being positive, but heading in the direction you want to go. And we're talking about vision today. I thought this was a good way to kind of emphasize that. So anyway, that's our slogan for today. A joke for today, Gina. Why did the guy try to avoid surgery by rubbing ketchup in his eyes?
Why did the guy try to avoid surgery by rubbing ketchup in his eyes? I don't know.
Because he heard that hindsight was 2020. Hind being the ketchup
Yes,
hind.
yes, yes. Explaining the ketchup joke
Yes, I know.
in case you can't catch up to what we're talking about. So, looking at our vision, looking at our eyesight, looking at looking. So, I was talking about clarity. That's what we often think about when we think about visual skills. Um, and yet, there are so many other components of vision. So, we talk about depth perception. Those people know what that is. Can I tell how far away something is? You know, I see this pen here. Can I accurately reach for it? Um, but there are so many other visual perceptual um, skills that our eyes are able to do. And a lot of these come into play with driving, which, as Don told the story about my father and Parkinson's and its effect on vision. And when you go for a driving assessment, a neurological driving assessment with an occupational therapist, they're looking at more than just clarity. You know, can I see, can I recognize the signs and know what they are? But how good's our peripheral vision? You know, we normally, when we're looking straight ahead, we can see out to 90 degrees from our eyes, but that can diminish with age, it can diminish with different diseases, and one of them for sure being Parkinson's. And where you may, you know, if you have no peripheral vision, it's like having the blinders on a horse. You know, you're only seeing right here in front of you. And if a car suddenly, you know, swerves, you're not going to see it right away. You're not going to be able to anticipate problems on the road. So just looking at some of the different visual skills, um, there's well,
I have nothing to
what
fill in here, so
um,
unless I can find
so
another joke.
there's things like visual closure, form constancy. There's all these different terms, right? So if you're driving along and the sign is occluded partially, can you figure out, you know, what that shape is,
Oh,
even though it's not fully there, right? These are things we don't realize that our eyes and our brain are doing when we're driving or just moving about our daily life. You know, our visual attention, how well we can maintain attention onto something visually. Spatial relationships, you know, how far things are. That's another important skill for driving. Can you tell how far away that
yeah.
car is from you? Can you tell, you know, that judging the distance, which as you're driving at whatever speed, that's so important to know. And then you have things like eye-hand coordination, you know, how well you can look at
How well you
something
can
and
react to something.
yeah, you think about playing a game, right? We often think about that with playing a game. So um, all these things can be affected by our eyesight. Bear with
I'm
me.
looking off to the
Um,
side.
and then we can have some degenerative changes that can come about. One of them is glaucoma. It's something there's a genetic component to it. So every time I go to my eye doctor, I make sure they're checking for it because I have my mother and other people in my family who have glaucoma.
I
So
was told I got a very small portion of that starting myself.
glaucoma or cataracts?
Oh, cataracts, not
Okay, those are two
yeah.
very different
So just
things.
define them so maybe we can.
So cataracts is clouding on your
That's true.
lens.
Yeah.
That's very common with aging. People often get cataract surgery where they're basically putting a new lens in the eye. So that's how clear it is. It makes it fuzzy. So glaucoma is different. It's damage to the optic nerve.
Uh,
The optic nerve what transmits the visual information from the eye to the brain. So our eye is kind of like a camera. It takes in information and then our brain interprets it for us to be able to see. So it's often called the silent thief of sight. It can be caught early enough. There are treatments that can minimize the deterioration effect. It's typically associated with older age, and certain medical conditions can contribute to glaucoma. So that's one thing that's common to see in people, especially people as they're getting older. Um, and it affects. Bear with me. Um, That's not what I wanted. So another common thing that we hear and talk about with older people is macular degeneration. So there is age-related macular degeneration. So over time, um, your ability to see fine details and your central vision, um, you lose that ability. So what I wanted to say about glaucoma is it affects your peripheral vision, and macular degeneration affects more your central vision. So people with macular degeneration, you might need to they're looking to the side. If you come directly at them with something, it's harder to see it. Um, so there's dry and wet. There's different types of macular degeneration. Some of it's treatable, some of it's not. Um, So, who is at risk? If you eat a diet high in saturated fat, you're apparently more likely. If you're overweight, if you smoke cigarettes, if you have high blood pressure, if you have a family history of age-related macular degeneration, and another risk factor is being over the age of 50.
well, wait a minute. Well, we both got that.
Um, so this is something that really can affect us as we're getting older. I worked with someone at one of the communities I worked at who had both glaucoma and macular degeneration, right? So this lady had very limited eyesight. She had it affected her peripheral vision, her central vision, um, and yet she was still walking around with her walker and managing in her environment, treating.
Stumbling into a lot, but no.
No, actually, she wasn't. She learned the skills. And if you're working with someone with visual impairments, um, the Association for the Blind is a great resource. I'll put a link to that on the site here um, that you can have to.
Maybe we should throw a little Gene, what's it with that the movie with
Oh, hear
Jim?
no evil, see no
Yeah,
evil.
throw a little of that in here just to 'cause I just saw part of it on Facebook just recently, and it was really good. But anyway,
That's wonderful.
what about just since something for me to join in with? But
Yes,
I
Bob.
know I had issues with the spotting, and can you talk any about that? Do you know anything about that? I don't know.
I think that's connected with cataracts.
I'm sorry, I'm throwing that out there, but I just
Um,
well, I know for me it was bad for a while, and then the doctor just said, well, you'll get used to it, and then it changes it because I don't see him as much anymore. I do hear once in a while see one float
little
by.
floaters.
Yeah,
They're called
floaters.
floaters
Yeah.
in your eye. Um, Yeah, my mind
Sorry.
is on to other things right
Sorry.
now. Um,
I can talk about floaters. I just looked it up.
okay, Don,
Have
tell
a
us.
part of this. Um, there are tiny spots on or specks that float across your field of vision. Most people notice them in a well-lit room outdoors on a bright day. Floaters are usually normal, but they sometimes can be a sign of more serious eye problems like retinal detachment. That's when the uh, retina,
Retina.
okay, um, that's when retina at the back of your eye separates from the layer underneath. When this happens, you might also see light flashing along with the floaters, dark shadow come across the edge of your sight. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Thank you. Um, so these are all different things that can affect our eyesight. A big area to look at is when someone's had a stroke. Um, I'm on stroke.org, and it says somewhere I read a statistic that 65% of stroke survivors will have vision problems after the stroke. And these are things that are not always talked about. So why does that happen? So it depends on where the stroke happened in the
Yeah, I was gonna
brain.
say.
So the stroke is either a blood clot that gets lodged in an area of your brain that disrupts the flow of neurons and information, or a bleeding in an area of the brain. And again, that destroys those cells in that area. Um, and so, what areas of the brain are involved with vision and visual processing? So, the occipital lobe, which is the back part, um, it's where most visual processing happens. So if the stroke occurred in that area, you could have issues with visual processing. Um, the, the brain stem, so that's the lower part of our brain, kind of we think of our reptilian brain that's got our basic functions of respiration, heart rate, all those things. It controls the eye movements, um, sensations related to balance and stability, and your ability to recognize and understand objects. And so, um, so these different factors, if the stroke affects them or any other type of neurological disease, it can cause vision loss. Sometimes what can happen with a stroke is what's called a visual field loss. So that means part of our vision is affected.
Mm.
So you have fancy names like homono- homonymous hemianopsia, and it's loss of vision in the right or left visual field. So this doesn't mean that I've lost vision in my left eye. It means I've lost it in my left visual field. So if you took, tape or something and put it over the left side of your eyes or your glasses, that's a left visual field loss. So you can see out of both eyes, but you're limited with where you can see. Obviously, things on the left are going to be really impaired to be able to see. Um, um, and it's more common to see the left visual field loss, and that would be a stroke on the right side of the brain. Um, there's quadranopia, loss of a quarter of the visual field. There's different types of visual field loss. You can have a blind spot in one eye. Um, you can also have something what's called neglect. So with this, you may or may not have the visual field loss, but if you can have neglect and still have the other factors of vision intact. And what this is that the person is unaware of things on typically the left side. And so we see commonly someone's had a stroke that's affected their left side. They may have weakness on their left side, and they're not aware that this left arm is part of their body.
Oh,
And
wow.
and so they don't notice, they don't pay attention. Their brain's not tuning into things on that left side, and so they have to learn skills of turning and looking. And I've often had to teach people, especially when there's almost no, or no movement in that arm, especially to find their arm because it could be caught underneath them, it could get trapped, and if they don't have sensation, they could be injuring their arm and not knowing it. And so you have to teach them how to find their arm, to pick it up, to keep it with them. And so that's what's called a visual neglect. There can be disorders of the movement of the eye. This can be seen in head injury, strokes, and other things. And that's how well your eyes are moving and how well they're moving together. If your eyes are not moving well together, it can cause double vision,
Oh,
where you're seeing things double. What's often done to help with that is they put a prism in the glasses that helps to bring that together. But our eyes have to be able to scan. They have to be able to move in different directions. So you can have weakness in your eye muscles that can affect your vision. And all these things are related to balance as well. If you're not
yeah, that's true.
seeing well or your vision is impaired, it can affect, if I'm not seeing things to the left, I might be standing in a way that I don't realize I'm off center
Hmm.
and I can't tell that. And so, creating, more likely to fall.
Cat wants to bite you.
No, she was licking me. And we spoke a little bit about Parkinson's disease and eye loss. With Parkinson's disease, you can have double vision, which I talked about. The eye muscles have trouble working together. So, especially when you're seeing up close, like when the cars were coming closer to you as you were driving, you saw one car, and then as it got
Split
closer,
up the two.
there were two cars. And a prism is often used to help correct this, and it may or may not help. I know my dad had prism in his glasses, and
No, it didn't.
he didn't always felt it help. You can have dry eye. With Parkinson's, there's decreased blinking that can happen, and so the eyes can dry out more. You can have just blurry vision, like I do. If I take these off, um, and trouble reading because difficulty with the eyes moving together on the page in order to be able to read, um, and also trouble opening eyes. It's called apraxia. Um, the eyelids also drooping, and I'm not sure if that's connected with Parkinson's per se or another disease where someone's eyes, the lids are drooping down, so it's harder
I
to
was gonna
fully
say that's not
open
my brother goes through it,
the eyes. Um,
and I can't
so
think.
yeah, I think it's common. It can be common for
Yeah,
other things, but so there's a lot of different things where the vision can be affected, and you could have macular degeneration and Parkinson's, and maybe you had a stroke. Like there can be multiple factors going on, and you know you're getting angry with someone because they're tripping, they're falling, or
mm,
doing things. But we got to get to the causes of these
yeah.
things, because if you're not seeing well, and it's not just can you read the clock? Yeah. Can you read your phone? Yeah. But there could be so many other vision um, areas of concern going on. So beyond just clarity, being able to see. So these are things we need to take in mind. We need to, oftentimes, finding a specialist, a neurologic vision specialist. If someone has Parkinson's or has had a stroke, you really need to find a specialist who deals with this. As an occupational therapist, there are occupational therapists who specialize in vision assessment and vision training skills. I learned a lot of this from my first job working with brain injury rehabilitation. People often in a car accident with severe trauma to their brain, and it can affect different parts of the brain. And there's something called cortical blindness, where your eyes are taking in the information, but your brain can't interpret it. There can be, so many different factors.
Well,
And
we recent well, about a year ago we interviewed, um, and my mind's going blank on her name now, but she was she had her degree in eye work. I can't. My mind is going blank on it. But you remember we interviewed her.
okay, we'll have to pull that up and connect it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. I'll
not
have to.
coming instantly to my mind today. So, our eyes, they do so much for us. And, if you want to imagine, what these things are like, think about, if your glasses get really dirty and, it's harder to see, right? That's affecting your clarity. You can easily, take some paper and tape, especially if you wear glasses, and block the sides of your eyes. Put on the left, you know, pretty much cut your glasses in half and block that as well as the side over here to
Just to
see
see
what
what
it
it's
looks
like. Yeah.
like with someone who's got a left visual field deficit. Um, I know our oldest driver's ed, and they went out on golf carts and they put on drunk goggles and somehow it
That's right.
simulated, what it's like. But there's other, things you can do to simulate other visual deficits. And it's important to understand this. And it can really help you empathize with your loved one, if someone's dealing with this, and to kind of tune in. And, your regular eye doctor may or may not, be able to identify the problem fully, but going to the right person. Um, the cat is,
Chewing on paper.
um, getting the assessment done, definitely looking for an occupational therapist. Oftentimes you just need a doctor to write an order for this, and then finding someone who specializes in this. Again, reaching out to Parkinson's Association, the Association for the Blind. There's different resources and things out there, and you don't have to be fully blind to benefit from these resources. We term it low vision, someone whose vision is impaired to the point where they can't see as clearly as they need to. There are people who are completely blind where it's black and they see nothing, but a lot of times legally blind, is the definition of that is not that it's not like having your eyes closed in, to be legally blind, not to be confused with legally blonde, which when I Google this is what comes up. It means having a visual acuity of 20/200 or less in your better eye, with the best possible correction on. So if your eyes, even with glasses, you're still seeing 20/200 or less. So that means that what someone could see it 200 feet, you can only see that well at 20 feet. Person with 20/20 vision can see details at 20 feet that someone with normal vision can see at the same distance. So legally blind individuals, they struggle to see the details of something just 20 feet away, which looks similar to because someone with healthy eyes can see 200 feet away. So legally blind individuals could also have severely limited field of vision, 20 degrees or less. I talked about that 90 degrees of your peripheral vision. So if it's, 20 degrees or less, that could be part of being diagnosed as far as legally blind.
The person I was looking for is Dr. Melissa Karp. We interviewed her. She's an audiologist, and she talked a lot about this also. So we'll put that up there on the.
She's an audiologist.
Yeah.
She talked about hearing.
Oh, that's true. Never mind.
So if you want to learn about hearing and eyesight, I don't want to leave out diabetes. Diabetic retinopathy is another cause of vision loss. Diabetes can impact so many areas of the body, and it can also impact vision. So age-related macular degeneration, cataracts, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, having had a stroke, Parkinson's disease, just to name a few things. I know multiple sclerosis can sometimes affect people's vision, and some of these diseases don't always affect vision, but they often can or do. Like 65% of the people who suffered a stroke can have some vision changes. And again, they can be mild to severe. And, all the different areas of our eyesight, things that we don't always think about when we think about how well can you see.
Well, I know it for myself. I don't think it hasn't affected me totally, but I do notice like nighttime has gotten a lot. I don't really care to drive as much at night as I used to, and I think it's been since the stroke.
Well, and our pupils have to adjust at night to let in more light to be able to see, and there's other factors
Well,
involved
the
too.
lights, I remember that what got me was the lights like especially on a two-lane road when you got lights coming right at
Glare.
you. That was a tough one to.
I know when I got my first multifocal lenses that they put the anti-glare, and that makes a huge difference
Mhm.
to me in diminishing that glare that comes with driving at night and lights in your eyes. So one of the many reasons I now prefer these to wearing contacts
Mhm.
um, to help with my vision. Although the frustrating thing to me about glasses is I have better peripheral vision with contacts.
Yeah.
With glasses, they for one, there's a the frame is affecting it, and because my lenses are so thick, I really don't do well with a frame that doesn't have the side to it. But then it's not correcting, my vision out way out as far out to the side.
How far back did you when did you first get glasses? When did you say?
I think I was 9 because
Uh,
it was because I was playing softball. This is another fun story. I played softball from the time I was about 9, and the coaches were like, Gina, swing, just swing, hit the ball, Gina. And I wouldn't swing. Like he would bribe me with ice cream if I would just swing at the ball. Well, like less than a year later, we found out I needed glasses. And then the next, we had moved and I was on a new softball team and I hit the ball all the time. I did really well. But when your vision is that impaired, a little white ball coming at
Yeah.
you affects the ability to identify when to swing that bat. So it's just
I
kind of
was in fourth grade, so that would have been about the same time. I just
yeah.
couldn't see the board and
Hmm.
losing out on things because I couldn't see it. And so yeah, I've had these for well, you've worn a lot more in contacts later on. I couldn't bear that in my eyes for some reason. Had trouble keeping contacts in, but
Yeah, I was so excited at 16 when my mom finally let me get contacts. And well, soft lenses made a big difference.
yeah.
Um,
I remember the first ones I tried. Oh my gosh, they were hard ones, and they were like miserable on the eye.
yeah, they've come a long way,
Yeah.
and to disposable because I know when I had the kind you would wear for at least a year, the, it would build up with kind of cloudiness would build up on the contact. And when I got my disposables, it's like it helped to minimize that. I think maybe allergies or other things could affect
Mm.
that happening to contacts, just like different things affect our actual lens of our eye. There's so many. The eye is so exciting, so fascinating. The Discovery Place in Charlotte, someone told me it's not there anymore, but they used to have a giant eyeball,
Oh
and
yeah, you could walk in and look
and
inside of it and all
it
that.
identified all the different parts of your
Hmm.
eye and what they did. And as someone, especially working with brain injury rehabilitation and dealing with eyesight, and you know, depending on the type of injury, some injuries there can be a lot of healing and there can be a lot of improvement that occur. And when you have like muscle weakness, there's different things that you have in the eye that actually can be worked on and improved. Reading and your eyesight also need to think about with young children who are struggling to read or having some
Hmm.
difficulty. There could be weakness in their eyes. There can be other factors
Hmm.
affecting those abilities. And so finding a specialist who really deals with that to have things checked out. So whether yourself, your children, your aging parents, your grandmother, your aunt, having issues, falls,
Well, you got
getting injured,
we think about nowadays too, where we're staring at the too close to the machine, and
looking at our phones and
I
things. It's
think
going
it
to be
has effect.
interesting to see over time
Yeah.
how these different conditions in our eyes, how they change. Yeah, I always thought about that. Carpal tunnel is overuse of the wrist, and it came about people doing repetitive motion. So either working in a factory or typing and things. And so now we're using our thumbs with typing all the time. Um, I'm like, we're going to start to see more
Motion,
issues with that joint
thumb exercises.
versus the wrist. So yeah, just thinking about all these different components. So if you have a loved one, they're having trouble learning to read, they're having trouble, or maybe um, it's an older person who's now, having trouble reading.
Well, I mean, it goes back to when my mom was in the hospital, and we didn't realize, she was running into things, And we didn't realize that she had her glasses stolen while she was,
She didn't have her glasses. So
so
yeah, it was
you gotta,
affecting her. But it's important to have it checked out, have the basic eyesight checked out. But oftentimes with these different things, you need a specialist. You need someone who specializes in glaucoma, macular degeneration, or if there's other neurological factors going on, you need someone who specializes in those areas. And again, the Association for the Blind is a great resource. Things like magnifiers, you can get ones that go over your screen. There's different types of magnifiers that can really help to enlarge images for someone who's having clarity issues. Lights, there's something called an OTT light, OTT,
okay.
that simulates the more natural sunlight. And it really helps. I keep putting this on my wish list every year because I think because of the severity of my acuity loss, I don't know, as I'm getting older, I'm always turning lights on because it helps me to see better. It brightens the contrast. It helps me to see better. So, and these lights are really because they're mimicking natural sunlight. It it can be even more beneficial to someone who's having any tough difficulty with their eyesight. And so, do you see what we've shared with you today? I hope you've gained some insight
Oh my, she's
into this
stunning it today.
into this topic and things and resources that you can share with your loved ones. And I'm definitely going to be reaching out if you know someone who's an ophthalmologist, optometrist who
That's true. So,
specializes
so
in
we
these
don't miss you.
areas, or an audiologist. We can talk about hear no evil, see no evil. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you with any comments, questions, concerns. Um, any topics you've enjoyed hearing, things you'd like to hear more about, things we have or have not covered, and positive, and negative feedback. We'll take all of it. We're here to help you on your journey with aging and caring for yourself and your loved ones. Check out Ask the OT. We'll be releasing some videos soon about some pointers and tips of things. And reaching out to Don and I and the work that we do supporting others. Join Don every Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where he goes online here on Zoom to do tapping.
Yeah, you can go to focushealthyfamily.com/EFT-group.
Or you can find it on our
On
website,
the website, yes.
focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can find a link to that. You can find links to more information about EFT and tapping, and again to the calls that he does. It's just whoever joins on the call. You might be the only one. You might get one-on-one attention, or it could be a group. You can listen in, you can learn, you can join in. So find us at Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, Instagram, Focused Healthy Family 1, and YouTube. Again, you can watch all of our podcasts on YouTube now and listen to them anywhere you listen to a podcast. We've been doing this for over 3 years now. It was about a year in when we started the YouTube videos. So the first year of it is just audio versions. But check us out. Check out previous podcasts we've done, topics we've covered. Share these with people you know who might be interested, who might have other people in their lives where they'd like to listen to it. Please spread the word, because the more people who listen to this podcast, the larger our viewership goes, the more ability we have to bring you other topics and bring you other information and people to bring in onto the podcast to discuss these things. So thank you for joining us here today. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.